Beneath the quiet forest, the air was thick with the scent of moss and rain. A thin mist curled around the tree trunks like it had secrets to share but spoke in whispers too soft for human ears. Birds occasionally called out to one another across the canopy, but mostly, silence ruled here. Not the empty silence of nothingness, but a layered, living quiet that hummed beneath everything. A boy named Elian walked barefoot along a narrow path that twisted through the undergrowth. He wasn't sure when he had begun his journey or how long he'd been walking. The days blended into one another, filtered through the green above and the earth below. He carried nothing but a small pouch tied at his belt and a wooden flute slung around his neck. His clothes were worn, stitched many times over by someone who must have loved him once, or perhaps still did, though Elian couldn't quite remember their face. The forest had changed him. The sharpness of time had dulled. Hunger came and went like wind through the leaves. Sleep was no longer a need, just a rhythm he occasionally obeyed. He had stopped questioning it after the third time he had slept in the hollow of a fallen tree and awoken with dew on his eyelashes and a squirrel perched on his chest like a tiny, twitching guardian. There were stories, he had heard them before, about people who entered forests and didn't return. Not because they died or were lost, but because they became something else. Something not quite human, not quite spirit, just other star. Elian hadn't believed those stories. Not until now. Sometimes, at dusk, he would come across things that shouldn't be. Once, he found a ring of mushrooms that glowed faintly blue and hummed like a lullaby. Another time, he passed a stone shaped like a seated figure, moss growing over it like a cloak, and he could swear it turned its head when he looked away. He never touched anything. He learned quickly that the forest didn't like to be disturbed. It tolerated him, perhaps even guided him, but it made its rules known. He once tried to leave. He had followed a brook downstream, thinking it would lead him out. After 2 days of walking, he came across a clearing with a tree that had a crooked scar on its bark in the shape of a crescent moon. He had carved that mark himself the week before. He realized then that paths in this forest did not always lead forward. Some circled. Some folded back on themselves like the pages of an old book. But Elian didn't fear the forest. He had come to it not to run away but to find something. Or someone. Her name had been whispered to him in dreams, not in words but in impressions. Soft laughter, the rustle of fabric, the feeling of wind tugging at his shirt like a playful hand. He didn't know who she was, only that she waited. Somewhere deep beneath the forest's veil of quiet and time, she waited. He began to play his flute when the silence became too thick. The notes were simple, old melodies his grandmother had hummed while shelling peas or brushing his hair with fingers like sun-warmed leaves. The music didn't seem to disturb the forest. In fact, when he played, things would move closer. Once, he opened his eyes after a tune and saw 3 foxes sitting in a perfect triangle, watching him without blinking. Another time, a figure made of vines and bark, vaguely shaped like a woman, stood at the edge of his vision, unmoving. He didn't turn toward her. He just played until she melted back into the trees. He never felt alone. Not really. There was something with him, not walking beside him, but folded into the very air he breathed. At times he caught glimpses of it, a shadow that moved against the sun, a flicker of white in the corner of his eye, the scent of lilies when none grew nearby. Once, he reached out to touch a flower and it pulsed gently beneath his fingers like it had a heartbeat. The petals shivered and curled as if reacting to his presence. He backed away slowly. On the 17th morning, though he wasn't counting, he found a tree unlike any other. It rose high above the canopy, its bark pale and veined like marble, its branches twisting into the shape of an open hand. At the base was a hollow just large enough for someone to sit within. The moment he stepped inside, warmth spread through his chest, and the world outside faded into a soft, gray hush. The forest breathed, and he breathed with it. That night, in the hollow of the tree, he dreamed again. This time, he saw her clearly. She stood on the edge of a lake, her hair dark and long, eyes silver and watching. She said nothing, only reached out her hand as if beckoning. Elian tried to speak, but no sound came. He stepped forward, and the water swallowed him. When he awoke, the tree had changed. Carvings covered the inside of the hollow, shapes and sigils and constellations. His hands were covered in dried sap, and a small, carved token lay in his lap. It was shaped like a crescent moon, just like the mark on the tree he had seen before. He tied it to his flute string. From then on, he knew which way to go. The forest no longer played tricks on him. Paths opened where there were none. Streams whispered directions. Birds flew ahead of him like messengers. He reached a part of the forest where the trees grew in spirals. Their trunks twisted around each other like dancers frozen in time. The air was cooler here, and the light dimmed even at midday. Insects didn't hum, and birds didn't sing. It was a place untouched, sacred. There was a pool of water in the center, still as glass, ringed by stones that pulsed faintly with a blue light. Elian approached and looked into the water. His reflection did not move with him. It stayed back with eyes that glowed faintly silver. Behind him, a voice spoke, not with sound, but with feeling. You came. He turned. She stood there, just as in his dream. No longer distant or half-seen, but real star. Her presence was quiet power, like the forest itself had taken form and chosen to speak. Elian stepped closer. I didn't know who you were. You did? You just forgot. The world makes us forget. He touched the token around his neck. Why did I come here? She walked toward him, her feet not disturbing the moss beneath them. To remember. To return. He hesitated. Return where? She smiled, and it was like watching the first sunrise after endless dusk. You'll see. The pool rippled without wind. The trees bent slightly inward. The light dimmed and brightened at once, like breath held and released. Elian looked around. The forest had never been a prison. It was a veil, a threshold, and he had crossed it. He walked to her. Their fingers touched, and the forest continued, as it always had, quiet, watching, alive. The forest continued, as it always had, quiet, watching, alive. But for Elian, something had shifted. Touching her hand was not like touching flesh or bark or even mist. It was like dipping his fingers into memory itself. Something familiar yet half-lust, sweet and aching. Her touch sparked a rush of images behind his eyes. A firelit room filled with laughter and shadows, a song hummed under breath, a storm that never reached the ground, and hands, his hands, sculpting something in the air. You remember, she whispered, not as a question but as an invocation. Elian nodded, though the fragments in his mind were still disjointed and scattered like leaves caught in a gust. He didn't have the full picture, not yet, but the sensation of truth was there, resting beneath the surface like roots below moss. She began to walk, and he followed. They didn't speak again, but they didn't need to. The bond between them deepened with every step, a wordless thread woven not from language but from resonance. They were walking downward, though there was no slope. The light grew dimmer, then brighter again, pale gold as though filtered through memories rather than clouds. The trees here were older than time, some with bark smooth like river stones, others gnarled with thick veins glowing faintly. Here and there, flowers opened and turned toward them as they passed, as though waking from a deep sleep. Elian glanced sideways at her. What are you? He finally asked, not out of suspicion, but wonder. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes, silver and still, scanned the horizon, or rather, what lay beyond the trees. Then she replied, I am what you left behind, and what waits for you still. It didn't make sense, and yet it did, the way dreams often do. He didn't press her. Instead, he asked, why me? She paused beside a tree with bark like molten glass. Because you heard the forest. Even before you entered, you listened. Most walk through it with deaf ears. But you. I played. Yes. She touched the flute that hung from his neck. This remembers. Songs are not just music. They are maps. Maps to what? She smiled. To yourself. A wind stirred, but no leaves rustled. The forest exhaled. In that moment, Elian realized they had been descending into something not geographical but spiritual. A depth not measured in meters, but in closeness, to truth, to memory, to essence. They arrived at a clearing unlike any other. In the center was a mirror, enormous, circular, framed by twisting roots that reached up from the ground like skeletal fingers and curled around its edges. The surface of the mirror was not glass but water, held perfectly still in defiance of gravity, standing upright like a doorway. This is the heart, she said. Elian felt suddenly weightless. Of the forest. Of you. Of all things. He took a slow step forward, gazing into the water's surface. His reflection stayed back, but it shifted. It became versions of himself, young, laughing, older, scarred, ancient, cloaked in moss, then something that wasn't quite him, and yet entirely him. Eyes that had seen stars born and forgotten. It's a doorway, he whispered. It's a choice. He turned to her. A choice for what? To stay, or to remember fully and become. The wind picked up slightly. Somewhere in the distance, a low, mournful sound rang through the trees. Not threatening, not sad, just ancient. What happens if I go through? He asked. You return. To what? She stepped closer. To what you were before forgetting shaped you. Before the world drew lines around your spirit and named them limits. Elian hesitated. The weight of her words sank into him like rain into thirsty soil. Will I still be me? Yes, she said. But not only you. He looked back at the path they had walked. He saw nothing behind him. No trees, no trail, only mist. The forest had sealed itself again, as it often did. Ahead was the mirror. His fingers touched the crescent moon token at his chest, and he stepped forward. The water mirror did not ripple. It opened. For a heartbeat, he felt everything. The falling of stars, the sigh of mountains, the pulse of whales in oceans beneath green skies. He remembered being small and vast, forgotten and loved, broken and whole. 1,000 lives swirled through him, some his, some not. The forest, the girl, the music, the memory, then silence, and he stood once more on soil. But this place was different. The forest still surrounded him, but it was lighter here. Not in color or weight, but in spirit. The trees shimmered at their edges, and the air rang faintly with the echo of unseen bells. The birds that flew overhead had feathers like threads of dusk. A deer passed by, antlers hung with vines, eyes like galaxies. It didn't fear him. It bowed its head and continued on. He turned. She was gone. But not really. He felt her inside him now, like a note still humming after the music has stopped. Like a warmth, behind the ribs that isn't lungs or heart but something deeper. And he remembered. He remembered building this place, not with hands or tools, but with will. Before he was Elian, before he fell into time and body and name, he had shaped the forest as refuge, a memory-net to catch pieces of himself, a mirror to guide others like him back. The girl was not someone else. She was the echo of his purpose, the guardian of the threshold. She was him, just as he was her, the balance between forgetting and remembering. He sat beneath a great tree that pulsed gently with soft, inner light. The flute was still at his neck, but now it glowed slightly, threads of silver twisting through the wood. He raised it and played. The melody had no name, no beginning or end. It poured out of him like water from a spring. And as it did, the forest responded. Flowers bloomed in his wake. Vines danced gently up tree trunks. A nearby stone cracked open, revealing a small bird made of crystal and fire. It took wing and vanished into the sky. Elian closed his eyes and listened, not just with ears, but with every fiber of his being. He heard the songs of those who had passed through the forest before him. Some had returned. Some had chosen to stay. Each had left echoes, notes in a great, infinite symphony. He added his own. Time passed differently here. Days were not counted in sunrises or shadows, but in transformation. He became a guide. Not in body, he didn't approach travelers or speak in tongues. But his presence, his essence, spread through the forest like gentle wind. Those who entered seeking truth found paths they didn't know they needed. Songs hummed on the wind, and sometimes, if they were listening, they would hear the faint notes of a flute. Elian learned to shape trees with thought, to paint the sky with emotion, to sing stars into waking dreams. Once, he met a child lost in grief. She wandered into the forest with tear-stained cheeks and empty hands. Elian watched her from afar, sending creatures her way, gentle ones, soft and quiet. He led her to a stream that reflected her happiest memory. She sat beside it and wept, not in sorrow, but release. And when she left the forest, she walked taller. Another time, A soldier came, broken from war, guilt thick on his soul. He tried to cut a tree in rage. The blade shattered. The forest held him. Did not punish. Did not heal. It simply witnessed. And in that stillness, he remembered what gentleness was. When he left, he planted a seed just outside the boundary. Elian watched over them all. Not as a god, not as a warden, as a memory, living. And sometimes, on moonless nights, he would sit at the edge of the clearing with the water mirror, and he would see others like himself, some across oceans, others in entirely different realms. Dreamers, seekers, pieces of a larger whole. He played for them. The melody carried far, across lands, across lifetimes. And somewhere, beyond the trees, another soul would stop and listen, would feel something stir in their chest, would step off the road, would follow the birdsong, would pass beneath the veil of green and gold, and the forest would receive them, because the forest remembered, because he remembered, because forgetting is never the end, only a pause in the music. Years folded quietly over the forest like new layers of bark. Seasons passed, but they did not age the trees here. They refined them. Leaves changed color not in decay, but in conversation with time. Petals opened and closed to songs that only the forest knew. Beneath it all, the rhythm of life pulsed steady, ancient, alive. Elian still played. He no longer needed to eat or sleep as he once did. His form had changed, subtly at first, but unmistakably over time. His skin bore patterns like the grooves of trees. His hair shimmered faintly in moonlight, not with silver, but with memory. He was not man or spirit, but something in between, a keeper of thresholds, a guide through the veil. And yet, even after all this, part of him remained human. He still remembered what it was like to be lost, to be afraid, to ache for something unnamed. That ache was sacred. He knew now, it was the compass of the soul. Sometimes, he walked the forest paths as a traveler, his flute silent. He watched newcomers with quiet wonder. Some wondered only briefly, their hearts not ready. The forest gently led them out, back to their lives, changed only slightly, a dream they would forget by morning, a peace they couldn't explain. Others stayed longer. One morning, Elian felt a shift, a new presence, tentative and curious. He followed the trail, silent as mist, until he saw her. A girl, perhaps 13, barefoot, eyes wide. She wasn't crying. She wasn't calling for help. She was simply listening, like he once had. She stood by a brook, watching the water like it held answers. Her fingers danced over the surface but didn't disturb it. Elian stepped forward, visible. The girl turned. Her eyes met his, and she did not flinch. "I heard the song," she said softly. "Not with my ears. Here." She touched her chest. Elian nodded. "What is this place?" she asked. He gestured around. "A place where the forgotten becomes real. Where what you seek begins to seek you." The girl sat cross-legged in the moss. "Will I remember everything?" "Only what you're ready to." She looked at the brook again. "My brother died last winter. Everyone stopped saying his name. Like he never was. But I still feel him. Like he's walking just behind me." Elian lowered himself beside her. "Then he is. What is remembered? Lives. What is loved? Returns." The girl's face trembled for the first time. Not with sorrow, but with recognition. "I don't want to forget," she whispered. "You won't," Elian said. "Not here." They sat in silence for a long time. Eventually, the forest offered her a path, lit with fireflies. She stood and took it. Before leaving, she looked back at Elian. "Will I see you again?" He smiled. "You already are." As she vanished into the green, Elian knew she would return someday. Maybe not in this life. Maybe not in any he would recognize. But the thread between them was tied. And so, the forest endured. People came and went. Some left behind carvings in the trees or whispers in the wind. Some never left at all. Then came the final day. Elian awoke in the clearing of the mirror pool. The sky above was lit not by sun or stars, but by something deeper, a glow from within the forest itself. Every leaf shimmered, every branch bowed. He knew. He walked to the mirror. This time, it was not still. It rippled slowly, like breath. The girl was there, asterisk her star. The one from his beginning. The one who had first reached out her hand. You've walked long, she said. I've walked home. Are you ready? He looked down at his hands. They shimmered faintly, not with light, but with time. He was whole now. There was no more forgetting left in him. I am. She extended her hand again. He took it, and together, they stepped into the mirror. There was no flash, no thunder, no great farewell, only silence. And then, asterisk songstar. The forest changed that day. Not drastically, not all at once, but the trees grew a little taller. The wind carried melodies longer. And in the deepest clearing where the water mirror once stood, there grew a tree unlike any other. Its bark was veined with silver, its roots shaped a perfect crescent moon. And from its branches, at dusk, a flute's tune would drift through the trees. Not sad, not gone, just a new song beginning. And beneath the quiet forest,